What's going on, Z.E.R.T Nation? It's XP001 here with
Instructor Mr. Gray.
All right, we're gonna first we'll start off. We'll just hit your background real quick. There, Mr. Gray.
Background: spent almost a decade in U.S. Army Special Operations. Was with several different units. Overseas experience in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Okay, so this is part 2 to our follow-up on the CQB mindset. We're going to talk about CQB history. So let's just start off as the evolution of CQB. You got World War I, trench warfare. World War II, which was highly urbanated. I guess I'm making up words again. Sorry, Colette. 3, you got Korea, which is more rural.
Open, yeah, big open spaces.
Open spaces. Vietnam, jungle. Besides.
Couple places.
Then we progress into the 70s, where through the 70s through 2000, where there wasn't really much going on, but we had all the German fraction terrorists and liberation of Palestine, all these terrorist groups, where then true CQB started to develop, which was initially hostage rescue. So from there, you had Panama, or was it Grenada, Panama,
Somalia,
Bosnia, and then we go on there. So what we'll do is, real quick, Tyler, just take a tidbit from the evolution from trench warfare and work your way up.
Okay, so the biggest thing, first of all, to say is, people kind of go, well, CQB history, or history of anything, who gives a shit? Teach me the tactics, show me how to be awesome. And that's great, but if you don't realize, if you don't understand the history of something, you're doomed to repeat it. So I could teach someone how to do something, how to do CQB, but if you don't understand kind of why you're doing it that way and how the history of it and how it all comes together, you're really missing a huge portion of it. So long story short, the modern cool guy CQB that everyone's doing today, what I'll call modern CQB, was basically developed in the late 70s by the new, at that time, counter-terrorist units that were basically developing these tactics for hostage rescue. So the way CQB is done today, and the way it's been done for the last 25 plus years, 30 years now, is basically developed as hostage rescue. And at a certain point, it was developed for hostage rescue, but at a certain point, it has lost that component and just become CQB. And my argument is they're two separate things.
Okay, good. From there, so basically, talk about the evolution from 80s, 90s, and now how we've been at war for a decade. How's that transition from information?
Cover the history of So basically, in World War II, the SOP for room clearing, and I forgot, it's obviously not CQB. It had a different name back in World War II. But basically, they threw 2 grenades into a room, and then did a figure 8 20-round burst from the BAR, Browning automatic rifle, which will clear a room. So that was the way they did it, and it was a good tactic at the time. Now, did they worry about civilians and non-combatants and all that? No, it was World War II. They could give a shit. I mean, they were carpet bombing cities at the time, so using flamethrowers, they didn't care. Then again, you had Korea, which no real CQB, Vietnam, no real CQB. Post-Vietnam, you had the counter-terrorist units that now started to develop hostage rescue techniques. And they were relatively untested in Grenada, tested a little bit in Panama, but barely, tested a little bit in Somalia, but barely. And so what that created was this huge, long gestation period where a massive amount of training had been done on CQB, and it trickled down from the counter-terrorist hostage rescue units, and those tactics, the hostage rescue portion of CQB, because the high-speed units were doing it, it drifted down into what all the units, conventional forces, started doing, and it just became the way CQB was done. That being said, people ask me, well, how do you do CQB? And I said, well, the first problem that most people have is they think there's a way to do CQB, and there isn't. There's no single way. In fact, each unit, each mission, each unit's capability, the training level of the people within that unit, their mission set, all these different things change how that unit should do CQB. So my point being is that you basically had top units tactics filtering all the way down, and what it has created, or what it led to in Iraq, which was when it wasn't even early Afghanistan, it was really Iraq when the CQB portion started ramping up, that you had the first time really in a couple decades that these tactics really started getting truly tested. And not just tested, but you had conventional forces doing CQB tactics that were really developed by the top tier units for hostage rescue.
Which, with that said, is conventional units. Let's just use Fallujah for instance. Taking a whole city, there was no need for Marines to do certain CQB tactics because there's no one to get rescued. There's no reason to go in a room or a building with a bunch of fucking bad guys in there. So that's where I think that big void in between that, and explain difference between an SF unit going in to get a high value target versus a standard conventional Marine unit just going in and clearing the street, clearing the neighborhood.
Yeah, and then that's the other thing is, if you look at when those tactics were developed, again, you start in the late 70s, all through the 80s, all through the 90s, the hostage original, modern CQB was developed for hostage rescue, which means the reason you have to go in to a building for hostage rescue, first of all, let me take a step back and say, by definition, if a hostage rescue team is getting sent in, then that means that the powers that be are basically saying, look, the bad guys, the hostage takers, are going to kill all the hostages. All of them are going to die. So we're willing to send in a hostage rescue force that we're probably going to lose people, but that's acceptable. That's their job. And their job is to take losses, but to rescue as many of the hostages as they can. That is the job of hostage rescue forces. And again, that's what CQB was, is we're going to lose people, but we need to save as many hostages as we can. Somehow, over the years, that turned into the mentality of not just the forces, but the commands, of thinking, hey, we can be so good at CQB that we can go in, kill the bad guys, and all of our people are good. That somehow that was the way you fight in a house. And it's not. So again, you look at, if a house is full of bad guys, and your mission is, hey, we're just here to kill bad guys, the house is full of bad guys, why go in?
Level it.
There's no reason to go in a house if it's full of bad guys. You're exposing all your soldiers to unnecessary risk. For what? To go in a house and say, yeah, I shot him in the face from 10 feet away. Don't get me wrong, that's cool, but are you willing to lose 2 guys for that? No, nothing's worth that.
And with that said, guys, obviously ZERT uses the zombie as a metaphor. So during civil unrest, or God forbid, apocalyptic event, and you and your family, your team are going through a decimated city, and trying to find those vital resources, you need to assess and evaluate that and use history, saying, hey, in that building there may be 7 or 8 guys in there. Is what's in that building, is it worth losing 2 or 3 guys, or should we just press on, suck it up, and try to find another location or other materials? So everything we do here is basically just applying to that day, whatever that day happens. So other than that, Mr. Gray, thank you. XP001
Mr. Gray,
out. Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.